COMEX registered silver just hit a new low, and that's the only pile they can actually deliver. With March 2026 approaching, the question isn't price, it's whether the paper market can survive a real-world delivery rush when the deliverable stack is vanishing. COMEX registered inventory just slid to a new low, and that single word, registered, might be the most dangerous word in the entire silver market going into March 2026. Because this is not about headlines. It's not about the spot price flashing on your phone. It's about the only category of metal that COMEX can actually use to satisfy a delivery notice without begging, bribing, or incentivizing someone to cough up bars at the last second. Let's define the battlefield clearly, because this is where most people get tricked. On COMEX, you'll see two big inventory buckets. 1. Eligible, metal sitting in approved vaults, but not pledged for delivery. It belongs to someone. It's in the building, but it's not for you. 2. Registered, metal that has been warranted and made deliverable against futures contracts. This is the pile that matters when paper promises turn into real demands. When registered falls to extreme lows, the paper market starts to look like a bank with a high account balance on the screen, but not enough cash in the ATM when the crowd shows up. And that's why March 2026 is not just another delivery month. It's a stress test. A fracture point. A moment where the paper market either proves it can still perform physical delivery, or it exposes the truth, that the system only works as long as most people never ask for the metal. Here's the problem in one sentence. The COMEX paper silver market has created far more claims than it has deliverable ounces, and registered inventory is shrinking at the exact moment delivery risk is rising. Now let's talk about why this is getting worse right now, not someday. In late 2025, silver has been trading violently in the $60, $65 range. That is not a calm market. That is a market being repriced under pressure. And under that price action, the plumbing is screaming. You can see it in three places the mainstream almost never explains properly. 1. Registered inventory. When registered hits new lows, it means fewer ounces are voluntarily standing in the deliverable category. Owners are pulling metal back into eligible, or moving it out, or simply refusing to make it available at current terms. That is not bullish sentiment. That is a physical refusal. 2. Open interest versus deliverable supply. Open interest is the count of outstanding futures contracts, paper claims. In a healthy market, paper can be large, but it can't become laughably detached from deliverable metal without eventually causing a credibility crisis. When you see open interest representing multiples of registered, you are looking at a leverage stack. A pyramid of promises. And pyramids don't collapse when one person complains. They collapse when enough people demand delivery at the same time. 3. The price signals, backwardation and lease rates. These are the smoke alarms that go off before the public sees the fire. Backwardation in silver, when near-term pricing is tighter than future pricing, means the market is paying a premium for metal now, not later. In normal precious metals conditions, you expect contango because storage and financing cost money. Backwardation is what you get when urgency overpowers the paper curve. Lease rate spiking is the market's way of admitting, we need metal. We can't easily source it. Name your price. Even lease rates in the high single digits are a warning. When you start seeing sustained, abnormal spikes, especially around delivery windows, it screams shortage in the places that matter. This is the setup, registered is falling, paper claims remain massive, and the physical market is signaling immediate tightness. Now connect that to March 2026. March is traditionally one of the major delivery months. It's the point where positions that have been rolled and rolled and rolled finally collide with reality. Either you close the contract, you roll it forward, or you stand for delivery. And here's the part that turns this from a market story into a red alert scenario. Standing for delivery is no longer just a niche move. It's becoming a strategy, ***. Why? Because industrial users and large players are learning the same lesson retail stackers learned years ago, paper exposure is not the same as metal exposure. If you are a manufacturer and you can't afford a supply interruption, you don't care about the paper price. You care about guaranteed bars, on time, in spec. If you are a fund and you suspect a structural shortage, you don't want a futures P&L. You want the asset itself, because the asset is what reprices during a credibility event. So the question becomes brutally simple. What happens if March 2026 delivery demand rises meaningfully while registered stays at a critical low? There are only a few outcomes, and none of them are business as usual. Outcome A, COMEX sources metal aggressively. That means pulling ounces into registered, convincing holders to convert eligible to registered, or importing supply, or paying up in the wholesale market to attract bars. The paper price can be smashed for optics, but wholesale physical incentives would quietly rise. Premiums widen. The street price disconnects from the screen price. Outcome B, COMEX discourages delivery through financial pressure. This is where margin changes, position limits, rule tweaks, and risk management language shows up right on schedule, often after hours, often over a weekend, often framed as routine. The goal is always the same: force paper liquidation to reduce the number of people who can afford to hold positions into delivery. But here's the catch, that might shake out leveraged speculators. It does nothing to a well-capitalized entity that actually wants metal. Outcome C, COMEX solves the problem with cash settlement. And this is the one that should make your blood run cold, because it is the moment the paper market admits it can't deliver what it sold. Cash settlement is the escape hatch: here's money instead of metal. Sometimes it's framed as voluntary. Sometimes it's dressed up as a premium offer. But the meaning is the same: delivery becomes negotiable. In other words, the contract stops being a contract for silver and becomes a contract for dollars. And if that happens, if enough participants realize that COMEX silver is ultimately a dollar IOU, then the paper price loses authority. The market center of gravity moves away from COMEX and toward wherever real bars are priced and delivered without excuses. That's how a default event begins in the real world. Not with an official press release saying default. It starts with delays, incentives, confusion, rule interpretations, and operational issues. Then one day, everyone understands what it really is: the metal isn't there at the scale the paper market implied. Now, let's be precise with language, because people love to play games with definitions. A COMEX default does not have to look like a bank collapsing overnight. The system can technically keep functioning while credibility dies. If a contract that was marketed as deliverable becomes practically non-deliverable, if delivery is avoided through cash settlement pressure, then the market has defaulted in spirit even if lawyers keep it alive on paper. And once that credibility breaks, the repricing mechanism changes. Because silver is not just a shiny rock. It is a strategic industrial input. It's in electronics, solar, EVs, grid infrastructure, defense components. When supply is tight and demand is non-negotiable, price does not rise smoothly. It gaps. It jumps. It rips upward in discontinuous moves when the market realizes the float is smaller than advertised. That's why the registered drawdown matters more than any single price candle. It tells you something about behavior. Owners are not volunteering supply. Deliverable supply is becoming precious. The available at spot fiction is fading. And going into March 2026, the tension builds because the system depends on a psychological assumption. Most longs will not ask for metal. That assumption is the foundation. If it holds, the paper market remains the price setter. If it breaks, if delivery demand rises while registered is tight, then the paper market becomes a catalyst for its own destruction. Because every extra delivery request becomes a spotlight pointed directly at the vault. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. If you can't deliver silver into a major delivery month without extraordinary measures, then the market is not a market. It's a performance. March 2026 is shaping up to be the moment where the performance gets tested by the one thing paper can't counterfeit: physical withdrawal. This is why you're seeing growing talk about registered lows, inventory drains, tight spreads, lease rate spikes, backwardation, and delivery risk all in the same breath. These are not random metrics. They're the vital signs of a system approaching a stress threshold. And the closer we get, the more the narrative will split into two realities. The official reality: everything is fine, volatility is normal, contracts are functioning. The physical reality: bars are scarce, premiums rise, delivery becomes complicated, and the people with metal gain leverage over the people with paper. That is the problem definition. Not, will silver go up or down tomorrow, but whether the primary paper pricing venue can survive a delivery month when registered is already flashing red. Because if March 2026 exposes that deliverable silver is insufficient at the exact moment too many players demand it, then the only honest conclusion is simple. The paper price was never the real price. It was the containment price. And containment only works until the metal runs out.